I'm going to try to do without that microphone. Can everybody hear me okay? You sure? Back there? All right. No? I can talk louder. I can come over here. Richard's going to go crazy because he's trying to keep the picture going. But what I want to do is, I'm Ken Berger. I was born and raised in Allendale, South Carolina. I can explain most of the stuff that's in that last paragraph. I did finish dead last in my class at the University of Georgia, and I think I was ahead of Bo. He and I was just talking about it. He didn't even register. He was there for 9 months and forgot to register. That's a great story. And you wonder where we get these stories from. But I've been in the newspaper business for 37 years. I just retired. I had a great career. I was a sports writer. I was a Washington correspondent for our paper back in the mid-'80s. I just had an opportunity to do a lot of things. And now, in retirement, what do? You keep writing. I've written 2 novels. Wallace Savannah is my first novel, set in 1950s and 60s here in South Carolina. Basically, write what you know. It's set in South Carolina where I grew up, down on the Savannah River, a small town. And it's really about 2 things. It's about segregation and the Cold War coming to bear on a small southern town. I grew up in the segregated South. It wasn't pretty. Some of you remember it. And also right next door to where I grew up was the Savannah River plant, which is also known affectionately in that area as the bomb plant. It's where the United States government made plutonium for the atomic bomb right after World War II. They did it for about 20 years. So that was our next door neighbor. And of course, Allendale, where I grew up, was downwind and downstream. The smart people lived up around Aiken and North Augusta. But I've lived a charmed life. Yes, I've been married 5 times, but I ended up being married to Bonnie. And I'd like to introduce her right now, my wife, Bonnie. You know, my friends, I call her the love of my life. My friends call her the incumbent. But we're doing really good. We've been married 6.5 years, and I think we're in for the going the distance this time. So, and I have been married 5 times. Turns out there's no limit in South Carolina. So. No, I like deer hunting, you know. But what I wanted to do, Dan told me I've only got 15 minutes. So I want to take this opportunity. I want to take any time away from my friend Mary Alice and Barb. And what I want to do, if you'll allow me, is just to read to you for a moment. I'd like to read 2 of these selections from Baptized in Sweet Tea. This is a collection of columns that I wrote during my time with the Post and Courier. Usually when I didn't have anything else for the next day, I'd come up with something from my past. And Bonnie knows this as I got nothing for Tuesday. So I would always come up with something. But there's a lot of nostalgia to these columns. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, please just look at it for the pictures. It takes a lot of gall to try to sell people a book of stuff you've already run in the newspaper. So we put a lot of pretty pictures with it to help along the way. It's been a very popular. We're going into the 3rd printing on this book. It turned out to be a very popular gift book. It was even recognized in New York as the best gift book for the year in the country by independent book publishers. But that said, let me do this real quick. I love doing this. This is a column I wrote a few years ago. It's called "Our State is One Big Small Town." And some of you are from South Carolina, and many of you have lived here long enough to know what South Carolina's like. We're a relatively small state, and if you're around long enough, you know, you pretty kind of know everybody from everywhere, especially if you grew up here. So it goes like this. If you grew up in the Palmetto State, you know that South Carolina is a collection of small towns connected by country roads, family ties, and stories, true or false, passed along between friends and foes. When you're young, of course, your corner of the world is the entire world as far as you're concerned. Mine was the swampy swallows along the Savannah River in the southwestern part of our state, an area dotted with towns that pretty much peaked in the 1960s. I often say we competed in the hyphenated conference because all the high schools had names like Allendale Fairfax, Denmark Oler, Williston Elko, Bamberg Earhart, and Blackville Hilda. Once you grew up, went off to school, got a job, and a grip on how diverse our lovely state really is, you came to understand that it's all interconnected by old family loyalties, fraternity friends, sorority sisters, ex-wives, former brothers-in-law, business relations, beach houses, river trips, political enemies, Civil War stories, and things that make us all distant cousins, and this dysfunctional family with tree roots that run from the mountains to the sea. If you're from Charleston, for instance, you probably have relatives in Newberry, perhaps a college roommate from Myrtle Beach, a former girlfriend from Florence, an old drinking buddy from Anderson, a cousin or two from Beaufort, and a friend with a hunting lodge outside Saluda. People who went to Clemson have a friendly dislike for people who went to South Carolina, but they all know folks who used to grow tobacco in Pamplico, some who worked at the bomb plant outside Aiken, others who grew up in Gaffney, and a few who never left Aner. Through marriages, divorces, dove shoots, land disputes, house parties, boys' state, military schools, lawsuits, family reunions, summer jobs, business mergers, and midnight drag races, we're all just one question away from knowing somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody you know. You probably had conversations that begin with, if you're from Blacksburg, you probably know that sorry son of a gun so-and-so. That's usually followed by a remark like, well, I didn't know him, but his brother from Spartanburg was good friends with my uncle from Cross Anchor. Was good friends with my uncle from Cross Anchor, who married one of those twins from Andrews, who turned out to be first cousins with my sister's maid of honor in her first wedding to a guy named Bubba from Bamberg, who ended up going to jail for shooting a shrimper from Frogmore because he didn't pay up on a bet that he could hypnotize a chicken. Truth is, if you can diagram that sentence for better or worse, you're a genuine South Carolinian. I got a couple of minutes left. This one's for the guys. I appreciate you guys coming tonight. I hope you recognize this is called Hot Cars and Hot Summers. And if you know your cars, you know that's the tail fins of a 57 Chevy. All right? One of the favorite cars we all grew up with. This one goes like this. I come from an age when cars had bucket seats, stick shifts, double-barrel carburetors, and no air conditioning. Those were days when cooling the inside of an automobile robbed horsepower from those mighty mills that hurled us like rockets through the muggy nights of South Carolina summers. I grew up when cars were more than transportation. They were symbols of a society possessed with power, when speed limits were subtle suggestions, when seat belts were for sissies, and nobody ever got arrested for driving under the influence of obsession. Those were days when cars had names like GTO, Sport Fury, Roadrunner, SS396, Camaro, Barracuda, Trans Am, Charger, and Hemi. It was an era of cheap gas, hood scoops, lake pipes, speed shifting, drag racing, mag wheels, and growling, guttural sounds that would wake you up in the middle of the night and make you want to leave home. Today, people consider driving 80 on the interstate pushing the limits, and they're right. Speed kills. We have the statistics and the cemeteries to prove it. How we survived the 1960s roaring down those dark, rural, narrow, farm-to-market roads is a miracle that can only be explained by God's soft spot for fools. But speed was a fact of life and death in those days. It was glorified in the manufacture of muscle cars and elevated to a sport on racetracks around the South, where our heroes spun their way through catastrophic crashes, walked away, lit up a cigarette, and kissed the beauty queen. Such were role models in those devil-may-care days. I remember one summer night, high on humidity, when we were driving faster than our headlights could pierce the darkness, when telephone poles flew by like fence posts. The driver had one hand on the gear shift, the other was using to light up a smoke, the speedometer was pegged, and we were still accelerating. With all the insight of a 16-year-old, I thought I was finally living, when, in reality, I was a deer's breath from dying. Having survived such a reckless youth, I now drive with both hands on the wheel. It's reasonably close to the speed limit, seat belt securely fastened, eyes on my mirrors scanning all directions for somebody who looks like me when I didn't know better. But I must admit, when a hot car rumbles by, I still want to roll down the windows, let my hair catch the rushing wind, and leave the air-conditioned airbag world of modern cars in the dust. Thank you. I just want to say thanks to everybody who came out here tonight. You don't know how good it feels for people like us who sit in rooms by ourselves writing books. And it's a very lonely job. When I was a reporter or a sports writer, it was a very, very social job. I was around other writers all the time. You know, we were always exchanging ideas, and I loved it. But when you go from that world to writing books, what it is you sit in a room by yourself for long periods of time. And you better like yourself a lot, because it's a very disciplined, and you know, Mary Allison can tell you, you don't get anything done unless your butt is in the seat, and you have to spend a lot of time typing is what we do. So to have people come out and listen to our stories, and to even, you know, to come out and support us in any way, we really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, love Bluffton. I can do another thing.
I know you could, and I would love to do that. I just want to follow up on your comment very quickly. I was asked to write in a trade journal a year or two ago, and they said, "Can you do this?" I said, "Sure." And I said, "Well, how many words?" It was like 2,500, 3,000, something. And anybody can write. I know. I was calling everybody I knew in the company to say, "Can you add anything to this article?" But anyway, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
I love that book. Mary Alice, I want to thank you for coming back the second time. I know you have a lot of fans out here this evening.